What is best in life? To crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and to hear the lamentation of your women.
Are you ready now to witness a power not seen for thousands of years? I am the strongest! I am the Viking!
Quick question.
Yeah,
no profanity, right?
This is a very adult
Let's
channel.
go.
Yeah, we're
Let's go.
good.
Let's get it going.
Yeah, so if you want to go into your cocaine addiction and how that spurred your PR as a collegiate weightlifter, feel free as long as WADA's not coming for you.
I got you.
How did you first find the weight room? Because I think you started out more as a general strength training enthusiast before you transitioned.
Definitely. So I would say, so I've always done martial arts in my life, right?
Okay.
And so in high school, I really got into wrestling, like BJJ, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and like MMA. And I was super into it. I'm taught like old school Pride, like early UFC stuff.
Yeah.
100%. So there was an old boxing MMA gym that was around town. And funnily enough, I used to be like, just like a computer, just like kind of insular kind of kid. And my parents actually forced me to join this MMA gym at like 14. Wow. And so I started doing that and going pretty consistently. And I loved it. And I would say the biggest thing it really taught me was you have to push yourself. Like really, that's what I say, like for like a lot of athletes already know this. Like if you were in high school or earlier, it really teaches you kind of like how to push yourself. So like if you kind of transition into like strength sports or weightlifting after like your actual sport, you already know kind of how to push the envelope a little bit. And I think that makes like a huge difference. But I kind of did that for a few years and I was undersized. I was undersized as fuck. And so I was like, okay, I need to start like lifting weights to kind of counteract that, like being so small. I'm only like 5'7", like you've seen me in real life. Like currently, I think I'm only like 5'7", like 190, about there. But back then it was more of like 5'6", 135, maybe. But I started just doing internet searches. Honestly, you know, like I think we're around the similar age. Like I'm 28. You learn from the internet. Like we're kind of internet kids. And totally. So, you know, you can just Google anything. And so you find like, shout out the old bodybuilding.com forums.
Dude, the Misc, classic.
Yes. So yeah,
so depraved.
So like, are you aware? So yeah, I'm aware. So if you already know about the Misc, you're kind of understand about kind of like how I learned about strength and kind of like how I got introduced to it. It was like no bullshit bullying.
Totally.
Where it's like, okay, you get it or you don't. But you realize as I've gotten older, I've realized just not even from that form, but just from like that early YouTube scene, like the early like older TNation forums, that like out of that internet community are some of the bigger people you see today. Like if I'm not really a big social media stuff, like big fan, but I've noticed like some people names I've known back then are some of the stronger and like more well-known people in like powerlifting specifically. But no, I am aware, my man. That's funny.
Yeah, well, you know, Eric Helms and Alberto Nunez, who are, you know, they're natural bodybuilders, but they're part of 3DMJ. They like met because they were on the bodybuilding.com forums, you know. So you go way back, probably to the time we were first reading it, and those guys were like mods on there.
Yes, and it's like just being on those internet forums and just kind of just trawling the internet, downloading PDFs of books that I probably should have paid for, and I have paid for eventually. I've gotten some copies, and I want to just shout out a few of those strength coaches. You guys are amazing. But no, just like the early like I know we were talking the 70s big website. I know I was like super training. I tried to, there's this one book, Squat Every Day by, I think, Matthew Perryman, classic book, highly recommend it. But just kind of taking all those articles, like the elite FTS articles,
Yep.
pretty much everything you found on the internet, like I tried to absorb, or I've probably read, or I've seen something on it. And then it's kind of, so like kind of circling back to like the sports, I realized I like lifting more than like getting hit or getting hurt from like Brazilian jiu-jitsu, like boxing or wrestling. Those sports, they're fun. And also shout out BJJ, but people don't realize like those sports still beat you up bad. Like, especially if you're trying to compete in them at like some type of level, like actual competition, your joints will take a beating.
Oh
But,
yeah, I quit jujitsu because my elbows couldn't take it, man.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's 100% recommend it to the like the average person, but like with every sport, as you scale higher to more competitive levels, it's gonna be painful. Like hurt, there's gonna be some pain involved.
Yeah.
But and there's a huge time commitment, just because there's also a time commitment with lifting, but it's just different. And as you, if you've seen, you competed or did BJJ, it's like it's just different than lifting.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
But first time I ever deadlifted, I hit 265 at like 130 something body weight. But I was always really explosive, like elasticy, the small elasticy kid. But I started lifting more, and I found out what's his name? Shout out Joe DeFranco.
Yep. Agile 8, man.
Yes, the Agile 8. And he had this oh, we're gonna go back in past. This is gonna be like nostalgia boulevard. But he had this program called Westside for Skinny Bastards. And I think it's up to like the fourth or like third or fourth iteration now. But I remember reading that first one, and I liked how it combined like the sports, kind of the explosiveness and athleticism, but also kind of the heavy lifting you get. And unbeknownst to me, he's getting like conjugate elements from the Ohio guys.
Right.
And I didn't even know that at the time, but as I got older and I realized, I'm like, oh, that's where he's getting a lot of his influences from.
Yeah.
But I started doing that, and I was progressing, and I was really strong. And as I kind of graduated high school and went to college, I think every dude as he goes to college is like, okay, I want to get jacked now. You come in as like a smaller freshman, and you start seeing like dudes that are kind of like 4 years older than you, 5 years older than you. And I'm like, okay, you're back on the bottom of the totem pole. And it's like, okay, let's get some lifting in. Like, I see why let's dudes do this now. But just like every other kid, did a bunch of partying in school. But I actually went to Ohio University. So if you know anything about Ohio, you know it's empty. They love Ohio State. And there's a lot of strong, like corn-fed motherfuckers that love like lift heavy weights.
Yeah.
So at my school, there was a powerlifting like club that started to form, and like some strong motherfuckers. I know Jack Music, who you might know or you might have heard of, but I think that's how he actually you interviewed Sam?
Yeah, Sam Shathar. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I know I recognized him through Jack Music, if you've never heard of him. But Jack is, I think he's almost totaled or has totaled 2K.
Damn.
But like he's really close. But Jack, he was a freak. And you'd see some of the Westside lifters, not all of them, but like one or two members. And you start that Ohio powerlifting community is just like really small. And so like if you know somebody who knows a gym owner, you're always like one or two people like away, like what do you call it?
Degrees of separation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You're literally like 1, 2, 3 degrees of separation from like anybody. So like you start to just, that's honestly how I learned most about powerlifting specifically, was lifting at Ohio U, kind of the internet, and just being in that like powerlifting realm. Like you have the Arnold sports festival every year in like what early March? What is it?
February, I think it's March, like first or second week of March, maybe.
Yeah. So I went there. The first time I went to that was, I think, 2013, right? So
okay, yeah,
before social media killed it.
right,
Like before Instagram, like Instagram was a thing, but it was before like TikTok, and it like really got like rolling heavy, I would say. Because like it wasn't nearly what it is now. But I will say that was probably a big turning point where I was like meeting. So I think at that sports festival, I met who did I meet? I met who has the record at the 242? You definitely know what I'm talking about. It was a the Lilliebridge.
Like all time? Yeah, that family's crazy.
I met Eric Lilliebridge and his dad, and they were two of the nicest people. And I was like, I remember I was with my pops, and I was like, dude, that dude's like actually the strongest human being alive, like in terms of total, and just casual. No one's really noticing it, but it just blew my mind. But meeting him, I met some really big name strongmen who at the time weren't that big, and Robert Oberst.
Oh wow,
yeah. So I got to meet him before, like in 2013, before he got like. I have actually a picture with him, and I literally look like a teddy bear next to him. It's hilarious.
Those guys are fucking huge, man. It's crazy.
I think he's like 6'7". He's 6'6" or 6'7". Like I think he used to play basketball, but the dude is like I said in the picture, he made me look like a teddy bear.
I know the feeling, man. I've been there. This is weird. Talk about degrees of separation. I did my master's out in California, and my ex's dad was a football coach for Aptus High School, which is actually where Ed Kemper, the like co-ed killer, is from, which is fucked up. But 6'9", so maybe there's strong man in the water there, you know. But
100%.
Yeah. But Robert Oberst played center for my ex's dad at like on the high school football teams.
Oh, that's what. I feel like the older I get, I feel like the world of strength, it's niche. That's something like it's like powerlifting, weightlifting. When you're in it, it seems bigger, but in reality, you're probably like, for most people in this, probably like 5 degrees of separation.
Yeah, man. I never thought I'd be talking to Sam Shathar on a podcast, you know?
No.
Yeah.
When you said his name, I was like, why do I know who that is?
Had to reach back in your mind.
Yeah, I was like, why do I recognize his name? But like he's strong. He wouldn't know who I am, but he's crazy strong. Who else? I met Silent Mike way back in the day. Shout out Super Training.
When he was still actually silent, because now he's like a lot more of a personality, you know.
Yeah, no, this was like way back. I remember he told me always he's like steak broccoli, my man. That's his thing. He was like steak and broccoli. Who I met not really into his bodybuilding, like obviously Arnold, like I knew, like pumping iron, watched all that. Of course. But like this was when I think Phil Heath was Mr. Olympia.
That's what I was going to say when you said 2013, because I'm pretty sure 2012 or 2013 was one of the years where Kai and Phil Heath kind of got into it.
Yes. And honestly, no, the line for him was crazy. You could see him from a distance, and you get why he's Olympia. He's like, when people say 3D, you're like, oh, he just looked like perfect. Like I kind of get it.
Yeah.
But no, I would say the coolest one, who is the coolest bodybuilder? Big Ramy. I got to meet him when this was 2013, Big Ramy. There was no line for him. Yeah. And so the motherfucker, like, coolish, because he's Egyptian, right? He couldn't speak English that well at all. So like you're just taking pictures with him, but he's not in real life, it's crazy. He is not that tall, but just there's a reason he's Big Ramy. It's crazy. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
I know I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but like you're bringing back just like this conversation.
Of course, man, the nostalgia. Yeah, I get it.
Pretty much nostalgia, because like you're referencing when you said the Misc, I was like, oh my gosh, I haven't heard somebody say that.
Well, dude, 70s Big was formative to me too, like that blog. Yeah. And Justin Laseck, you know, he kind of like was towing the line between the general strength and Olympic weightlifting, you know.
So No, definitely. Kind of how I got into Olympic weightlifting specifically. So I was like, I obviously you've seen the old Cal Strength videos, like
Dude, so
the
classic. Donnie
originals,
Schenkel,
yeah,
John
Donnie
Noy,
Schenkel.
amazing. Yeah.
Those were really big. The honestly the Iron Mind videos,
Okay.
those were the ones where I was like, this is insane. This is crazy. And actually, being in Florida, you probably know this. I actually went to elementary school in Florida. A lot of schools here teach high school at the high school level. They used to compete and bench press and clean and jerk. And
That's
so
interesting.
yeah, so I'm not sure if that's statewide, but I do know at the like high school level, they used to compete in that. So in Florida, you would have kids who would do it would be bench press and no snatch. It would be bench press and clean and jerk. And like obviously it would be a lot of it would be sloppy and stuff.
Sure.
All high schools are the same. But it still introduced like that concept and element of this exists.
Mhm.
And I remember kind of reaching back. That was my first introduction to Olympic weightlifting, actually, was what was it? High school. High school. I actually didn't do it then at the time, but just knowing it was there, it's like, okay, this is a thing. So I actually started just kind of, you probably know this when you get to a certain level, just kind of in strength sports or just kind of training or just reading enough, you're kind of you're able to do things like in the sense of, okay, I'm curious if I can do this, or I'm like a muscle up, I want to see if I can do a muscle up.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, like I want to see if I can do this certain movement. Like you start to know your boundaries,
Oh,
especially if you kind of played a sport before. It's like you've already done athletic movements.
yeah.
You've seen videos of people do it. So it's like, how does this work with just the bar? So
Right.
that's kind of how I jump into it. So just the 40, it honestly, so this would be a 45-pound bar. Start with a front squat. Can I do a front squat? Yeah, no. Okay. Next, start doing like a bottom up front squat from like a power rack. Okay, you can do that. Then it was hang cleans from a power rack. And
Okay.
it's like, okay, I can do this. And I started to notice that I could hit positions, like I was pretty flexible, like, you know what I mean? And I
Yeah.
could hit positions at certain weight. And I was pretty fast from like, that's when I started recording myself. It was probably, I think I have video of myself from 2015, like my first snatch attempt. And it's like this ugly, like the bar doesn't even spin, muscle up attempt of like 115 pounds. But it was like, you start to recognize, for me at least, it was like, I seem to be kind of like progressing at this, or like have kind of like a natural, um, kind of like a natural affinity towards specifically the snatch. That the snatching is kind of what really got me into Olympic weightlifting, because it was like, okay, I kind of understand this movement. It's almost, I really equated it to like, so like throwing a rock behind your head, triple
Sure.
extension, essentially, triple
Yeah,
extension,
that makes sense.
essentially. That came really natural to me, and I think that came from grappling and hip extension and
Okay.
throwing,
Yeah.
suplexing people and flipping tires. So that athletic component in Westside for Skinny Bastards, that was like already in place. So a lot of the Olympic weightlifting stuff was getting that initial mobility, the initial shoulder mobility, ankle mobility, and hip mobility, um, and kind of progressing, breaking the movements down in patterns and progressing it that way. I watched videos, honestly, countless and countless hours of videos, instructional videos. Shout out, not Cal Strength. There's another weightlifting coach off the top of my head.
Catalyst Athletics,
Thank
is that
you.
it?
Thank
Yeah.
you. Yes, I have a few copies of his books, and amazing. Greg Takano, an old Olympic weightlifting coach for the United States team. He wrote a book, read that, but just reading material, watching video, and then kind of self-coaching myself, watching my own video. But the biggest change kind of that accelerated this was my I guess it was junior year of college, around there, sometime there. But I started lifting with some dudes on the football team. And I think by this point, I could snatch like 175, 185, and I could clean and jerk 225, and I was probably about like 170. And I was training at the like school rec center. And so I started just lifting with some really strong dudes there, like some backup O linemen and some of the a few of the linebackers. But some of these dudes, like I've seen them power snatch 270 or 245. I've seen them easily snatch 290, probably only weighing like 215, but like really explosive, crazy athletes. But what I noticed was I was moving faster than them at Olympic weightlifting in terms of changing position.
Yeah.
And for Olympic weightlifting, it was kind of more natural, if that makes sense. Like it's like the best way I can equate it is like, you know how some guys are just naturally better at playing basketball or football or just hitting a baseball. I think Olympic weightlifting, if you start to think of it kind of as that mindset, as like an actual, like a sport, there does come some like natural talent to it, not just being strong. It's like, okay, this person's just naturally good at these three movements, clean, jerk, snatch.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's very rare to see an Olympic lifter who's actually limited by sheer strength. It's their ability to achieve a position and kind of have the body awareness to stay stable, right? To catch a snatch. And
Exactly. And you just brought something up, body awareness. I will say, like, the best Olympic weightlifters I've seen that came from another sport, wrestlers, grapplers, and like gymnasts.
Yeah.
Gymnasts, and honestly, one more I want to throw in that group, track and field, like throwers.
Dude, there are the Psycha Strengths guys on YouTube break down thrower training. And some of those guys, I mean, Jocko Gill would be an exception because he actually is relatively skillful, I think, at the actual movements. But a lot of those throwers, you just see them like basically hump up like a muscle snatch or a power clean at some ridiculous fucking weight, and it's
exactly
like,
it's that's what I'm saying. That some people naturally just have crazy triple extension.
Yeah.
And like, you'll notice it doesn't even come with, like, it can come in different body sizes. I've seen people that are tall and lanky just have crazy CNS, crazy just change of direction ability, and just crazy ability to just not get injured, even being smaller. And you just start to realize at a certain point, at least for Olympic, specifically Olympic weightlifting, I'll talk a little bit less about powerlifting, it does come down to like genetics. And like, what did your parents give you? Hard work, definitely, but a lot of it comes down to how fast were you before you even started training.
I certainly agree. There's something in the cards that you can't tweak. But do you think for you, starting in combat sports, that maybe helped cultivate like some additional awareness? Because I think when we're kids, there's a lot of neuroplasticity going on, and we can kind of quickly absorb skill sets if we come at it at the right age.
Oh, correct. There's definitely some nature nurture of that going on. Like 100,000%. So I would say if you start your kid in like taekwondo, swimming, gymnastics, soccer as a kid, the overall effect, like you said, the neuroplasticity and the movement patterns you're training are gonna stick for life. It's not even close. I shout out my parents. I'm so glad they put me in taekwondo when I was younger.
Nice.
Because it's just, I know how to flick my hips just naturally, and it's like riding a bike. You'll never forget that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you played a sport when you were younger, but you probably know you aren't really gonna lose it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I was a Taekwondo kid too because I just had this surplus of energy. I probably would have been medicated if I were, 15 years older, but that wasn't
Mhm.
the norm at the time. And I'm glad that I wasn't because, did Taekwondo. And then I got into endurance sports. So that's my background.
Oh
So I
yeah.
very much identified with being the tiny college freshman who's like,
Yeah,
oh shit, I can't be
definitely.
100 pounds and 18 years
No.
old. Yeah.
It's that's funny. So that's so funny. Endurance sport. I can say though, I have I had decent cardio during my wrestling grappling phase.
You
As
have
I've
to.
gotten
Yeah.
bigger, there's no I would say for my size at this point, I have decent cardio, but no way. Like I could run a decent 5K, but beyond that, I would die. I'm definitely type 2 sprinting, explosive, like
Yeah.
genetic wise. I 100% lean that direction. It's not even close. Um, and you can, that's the thing. You can train everything we're talking about, you can train and instill as a kid, and it can make like a huge difference as they kind of progress in their athletic career. But as you probably already know, once you get to like that collegiate D1 level, you start to, even high school, like pretty elite high school, you start to see the freaks. Freaks being the ones where it's like, okay, no matter what you do, that dude's gonna be able to run on the field after not sleeping, eating McDonald's, and
Yeah.
just outperform everybody.
Yeah, man. I remember walking into the Y weight room to get to the swimming pool because I was swimming, but you had to go through the weight room. And I saw the like freshman center for our football team. Uh, Probably 5'6" and 330 at 15 years old, just strangling 315 on the bench and just like straight up half repping it, but not top half. I mean the hard half, like chest to,
Oh, the
halfway,
sticking
and just
points.
kind of like bam, 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 just pistoning it out. Now, yeah, and it's like that kid and me at that time as a 100-pound kid, about his probably his height too. Just we are completely different, frames and models of yeah.
It's just like, what did your parents give you? I've met, I will say, I've gotten training with some college athletes. I've trained with a decent amount of college athletes, men and women. I've met women volleyball players that could push press like over 185 without that much training.
Wow.
Just when you start to see freak athletes, you're like, okay, like you're not even specializing in Olympic weightlifting, but I'm watching you like a linebacker almost snatch 290 pounds, and this isn't even your specific sport. And
Yeah.
it's just it's like some people, it's like what they just have that dog in them. And they really just do. But the I started competing. So like as I was training with these dudes, we started to look up. So this was probably 2015, 2016. And the qualifying numbers and totals for certain competitions were, I'd say now in 2024, I haven't checked, but like at least 20 kilos lower.
Mm.
And so things have gotten way, way more competitive as social media and just the rise of CrossFit, like Olympic weightlifting, strongman, like just YouTube, like strength is kind of was like in vogue, I would say, if
Mm-hmm.
for like a bit, still is. But some of the dudes I were training with were like our best lifts are way above these qualifying totals, and like would actually qualify us. Like if we hit our best lifts on those competition days, they qualify us for like national level events. And it's like, oh, we're just kind of training together with like no coach really, kind of watching each other and feeding off each other's energy. And so entered our first competition. And in that first competition, we qualified for university nationals. And this was probably Olympic weightlifting. And in this was 2016, so that would have been the New Orleans. This would have been the University Nationals that were in New Orleans. And I remember my first lift, I lifted. So this is when I was 69 kilos. And I think that's like my kilos. I used to know kilos, my kilo to weight off
It's
pound.
151, I think.
It's like 151. It's like 2.2. And
Okay.
I used to only
Yeah.
lifting exclusively kilos. But as
Oh.
I've gotten kind of less away from like like competition. It's like who gives a fuck?
Sure.
Weight,
Yeah.
weight, if
Yeah.
you're strong, you're strong. Weight is weight on it. I've kind of gotten to that point.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like 69 kilos, I was I power cleaned my first clean attempt. I remember
Oh my God.
110 kilos, which I think is 242.
Uh-huh.
I power cleaned and jerked 242 pounds. And I think I ended up that competition, my last lift. What is 260? Between 260 270. And I don't even know that in kilos anymore.
Oh, in kilos, that'd be like 120 would be 264 pounds.
Yes, yeah.
Kilos. Okay.
So for a first time competition, that was really good. And it actually got me a total to compete at university nationals.
That's
And
awesome.
so that was sometime in 2016. So like we trained really, really hard. So we went down to New Orleans, and that's when probably changed my life in terms of really training and competing in weightlifting. I met future and former Olympians. I met Maddie Rogers, which was crazy at the time. She's very strong. I met John Coffey, RIP. John Coffey was a very, very well respected weightlifting coach in Georgia, who like way back in 80s, I think 80s was like the women's Olympic weightlifting coach for America. And no, I'll never forget the conversations we had. I met I met some of the Angelo Bianco, who used to lift for Average Bros out of Las Vegas. I met pretty much the who's who at that time of Olympic weightlifting. Who was it? I met a very strong lady.
Sarah Robles.
Thank you. Thank you. I have a picture of Sarah Robles, strongest woman, one of the strongest, not just women, individuals I have ever seen in my life. I got to watch her. What did she do? Squat. I got to watch her do a squat session. And just the thing you noticed about these lifters, not that they're strong, that the consistency is the consistency in the lifts and the consistency of the movements.
Yeah.
You can be strong, but if you're not consistent, there's no point, especially if you're trying to be competitive in competition.
Yeah. That's something that really strikes me about, Olympic lifting is you have such a small room for error. You get 3 attempts in snatch and 3 attempts in clean and jerk. Is that right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And so you can have that day where your balance is perfect and you hit a crazy number in the snatch, but that doesn't mean anything. It's about what you can hit every day, or
exactly
9 times out of 10. Yeah,
exactly. And I will say though, sometimes you get those dogs in competition who just put it together and are just kind of will it. And you get both though. But like, I remember when I was actually trying to compete and be competitive, it was lifting like 6 days a week, like, and squats, snatch balances, a lot of the competition or near competition movements. So many complexes. And these would be between like 60 to 80%, like pretty intense. I would say most of my lifting style and training, depending on where it was the competition, but like obviously closer, pretty intense. A lot of heavy doubles, triples, singles. Now if you see me train now, that is like a zero reflection of how I used to train.
Yeah.
When I competed. No, now that I have like a full-time 9 to 5 and like adulting, I still just kind of like to lift 4 days a week if I can. My big heavy days being Saturday, Sunday, and then try to get like a squat pull day, 2 like squat pull days, like accessory days in during the week when I can. But oh no, how I train now, someone described it as chill strong versus actually being competitive in the movement.
Yeah. Was that a hard transition for you to make? Like just mentally with your relationship to the sport?
Definitely. But something I was always aware of, it's like, at least for me, and just from what science says, human beings are most explosive like before they're 25. Your strength capacity, as you already know, as you get ages, is not that. I think it maxes out at like almost 40 now, is I think what they're saying.
Yeah. Well, look at the Lilliebridges. I mean, they're still PRing,
Exactly.
Yeah.
And just as I've noticed in my own body, starting just kind of heavy lifting and just intense Olympic weightlifting, probably 18, 19 to now being 28. I can already tell that, and 28 is technically like they say like almost entering the prime of a man. I'm definitely out of my explosive prime, but my strength prime is going up. So it's crazy when I watch kind of like old footage, not nearly as fast or explosive as I used to be, which sucks, but like I'm stronger. And I'm noticing there's still room for progress. As you know, as you get older, you realize how you train smart, like the smarter you train, like holding back, how your programming, your diet, how you're recovering is way more important, because you start to, as you start to up those, you start to get gains, and it's like, okay, if I can refine these, I can really squeeze the most that I can out of kind of like this lemon fruit.
Absolutely, man. And that's one thing that stands out to me in this conversation is that you spoke about having that sort of athletic body knowledge, and you certainly have that, but that doesn't necessarily translate to being able to successfully coach yourself, which is extremely rare in Olympic weightlifting. But what I see in you is you have an ability to be analytical and to take sort of those feelings you're having and
Yeah.
articulate them for yourself in a way where you can make logical adjustments to your training, it seems like.
Correct. That's a very astute observation, Mason. You have to be, I've noticed you got to be really, and I will say, even me in a perfect world, if I was going to compete again, I would get a coach. Full
Yeah.
stop. It wouldn't even be a second thought. You are doing yourself a disservice. You are leaving kilos on the platform. I am not nearly as strong as I should be if I actually had a full-time coach through this. I do just want to, like, you know what I mean? Like, that's the best thing to say. It doesn't matter how self-aware you are as an individual, having a third person have complete kind of focus or control over your training, and not even that, getting real-time technique adjustments from someone else watching your movements. It's necessary key. If you're trying to be competitive, you need a coach in powerlifting or weightlifting, full stop. But I will say, if you are just trying to get strong, or even if you're a former athlete or even a decent power lifter and you've been lifting for years, there is no reason why you can't watch some videos, read some articles, and ease your way into trying to learn like the classical lifts. A lot of people have like these mind stops thinking that they can't do something, when it's really the difference between a lot of the average person and we'll say like a like semi like national level, like a national level lifter, is just they've been putting in consistent progress for like 10 years.
Yeah.
There's no secret sauce.
Yeah. And I think especially people have a tendency to sort of program hop whenever they're making their own decisions. And you know, if you can find a program that you trust and just stick with it, at least, even if it's a 12-week thing, just stick with it for that 12 weeks and follow it as it is. I think you're going to get better results than if you kind of do 3 weeks of small off and then jump to, Westside for skinny bastards and then get on 531 and, you never finish out anything. As speaking as a guy who has program hopped, just consistently and has recognized the error of my ways.
100%. And something I'll say, most people don't know their bodies well enough to even know, even in a 12-week program, did it work or not. It takes, in powerlifting or Olympic weightlifting, to kind of even know how your body feels or even know how you respond. It takes years. It takes, in terms of how does your body respond to heavy lifting for a long period of time? How does your body respond to the only way to really learn these things is to go through it and just gain experience. You can read anything you want. You can, a program in theory on paper might look good for you, But when you actually go through it, if you've done a good program, you're probably going to have to, life comes in the way. You have different stressors, your sleep goes in the way, work, school can get in the balance. So, and as you lift more, you start to get better at reading your own body to where it's like, okay, I have to pull back this day. Or it's like, okay, I'm feeling it this day. Like this might be a day we want to push it. Or like, I know this week is going to be great. So that's something I have to do in my schedule now is if I have a crazy work week, I do adjust because as you know, probably cortisol stress, it comes from everywhere.
Oh yeah.
And so recovery, if my work stress is crazy and I just beat myself down with training, even if it's not super intense, that compounds. And so recognizing that and having that balance, it's like, oh, my work responsibilities this week, or I don't have to travel this week. Like it's not just as crazy. I can push it a bit. Or like kind of knowing you have like holidays. It's like knowing I can get like a big lift in on a holiday, things like that.
Yeah.
But no, definitely I would say one piece of advice if I could give to people that are kind of like trying to like self coach or like just learn movements on their own is try to think of lifting weights not as lifting weights, but as if you're trying to play a sport. Like, how do you get better at throwing a football or throwing a pitching? Or how do you get better at trying to hit it, like swing a bat or golf? It's repetition. And that doesn't mean just repetition at heavy weights. That means just repetition at the movements themselves at different levels of weights at different times of the movements. If you start to think of lifting more as a sport and a sport movement, even the squat, bench, deadlift for powerlifting, but if you really start thinking of the snatch and the clean and jerk as sport movements and start thinking and training them that way, the way you approach it will be different. And the way at least for me, I've noticed you start to not beat yourself up about lifting, because would you beat yourself up really about your like 30th pitch that you've thrown in a session? Or would you beat yourself up out if you're like taking free throws? If you miss one, no, you just clear it from your brain and you go to the next repetition. Approach the movements like that, and I promise you'll get way more out of your training sessions and they'll be way more effective.
And I have to jump in here and say that when we reconnected the other weekend at Seminole Strength, I watched you miss a weight on snatch 11 times. And then you high pulled it a couple times to kind of get yourself in the mindset of, you know, the strengths there. And then you made it, you know?
Yes.
So
and I don't advocate that. Don't do that.
Sure.
Don't do that. But no, for something like that, and that's where you'll notice too, technique breakdown. It's a repetition and technique sport. Even if you have the strength to do a movement, like you said, I could miss it over and over, which I don't recommend. Give yourself 3 attempts. If you miss it by that third one, you're done. You don't need to hit it. But in this situation, you were right. It was probably, what was it? I think it was 230. I missed 230 probably 6-7 times, and then the final time I hit it, and I hit it pretty easily. And the issue, you start to realize, okay, it's definitely a technique breakdown, but it's not a strength issue. And when you get to that point, it's like, okay, this can be trained out. And taking a step back, and a big part of it in self-training is you have to take your ego out of it. You kind of have to be very self-aware enough to know, okay, there's me as the person and there's me as the athlete, and this person just moving through space, and just being self-aware enough to know. And that's improved as that. I promise you that gets better as you get older. And as you probably know yourself, you stop giving a fuck really about, as that people get older, you just kind of stop giving a shit. So it's kind of like, okay, point blank period. If you're not, and you have to be accountable, if you're not improving and you see the variables in place, you have to change something you're doing in your daily patterns aren't working or aren't giving you the results that you need. So you have to adjust. Having kind of that, not extreme accountability, but just self-awareness and accountability enough to know that, okay, pull your ego back. What you are doing as the coach is probably not working, is definitely not working.
Yeah.
You might see improvements in the long term, but is it the most effective way to improve? Yes, no, no. Adjust.
Yeah,
And
yeah. It's a self-awareness and self-honesty.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. You got to, like you said, you got to step around your own ego.
definitely.
Which is hard, especially, as a male in their early mid 20s, or even beyond that. We all get there at a different point, but yeah.
I will say some of the best lifters I have ever met in my life, and I strive to be this way. You don't attach your ego to lifting. You don't attach your self-worth to the gym. I mean, you can get passionate about your hobbies, don't get me wrong, but a lot of people get into the gym and get into lifting because of insecurities or some type of
Sure.
thing that they've had in their life. But you have to recognize who you are in the gym is a part of you, but it is not. Even me, who's been lifting at this point since I was 14 years old, over almost 15, like pretty seriously for 15, 14 years. I love chess. Like I play video games. I love going outdoors. Like you have to recognize that it is not you as a whole. It is a piece of you, and it can be a big piece of you. But I will say, don't attach your ego, pride, and self-worth to what you do. And just this kind of, I guess, goes for anything in life, but especially the gym, just because I know, and you've probably seen it being in gyms and just seeing gym culture over the years, that the gym attracts a certain type of person. It attracts everybody, but people want to improve. People want to, um, everyone has insecurities. So, but just if that improves going to the gym, just recognize that like that that's still not all you, and don't just put all your self-worth in that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, maybe you find an antidote and you get attached to it, right? Like it does something positive for your relationship with yourself and your confidence. But yeah, you have to be able to recognize that that's a springboard instead of the thing you have to keep holding on to. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
No, and it's like that's I know this conversation is like about the gym and like weightlifting and just strength sports, but just there's the mental capacity to lifting, and that mental component, and just recognizing it, I think, is a big portion about it. Like the how do you get stronger? It takes time and consistency, and the only way to be consistent is you can't be you have to consistently show up. You can't have a crazy life to where you're not showing up into the gym, or it's just, in order to get stronger at some level, you have to have some level of consistency. And you, like a chaotic life, that, I mean, some people can be strong and have a chaotic life,
sure.
but those, you're probably, we're a genetic freak and we're going to be strong no matter what. But having kind of some mental stability will assist you in, I guess, getting stronger and being consistent. And the best
Absolutely.
lifters I've ever seen are the ones that don't attach their self-worth to lifting, and they don't get mad if they have a bad session, a bad rep. They just move on to the next one. Next day. It'll be better the
Absolutely.
next day.
100%. Yeah, I mean, I hit a couple big PRs for me last week, and like, thanks. But, that was only facilitated by that consistency, continuing to troubleshoot as I went along. And, it took me, there was a point, I mean, in my early 20s, I thought I would never hit, the very mediocre numbers that I'm hitting now, but it means a lot to me because of that journey and that consistency. For me, strength training is kind of critical for my mental health, and it's more about about the sensation of being in there and pursuing something. And this is probably true of you too, and maybe why you continue to self-coach. I enjoy putting together my programming, man. I love doing the spreadsheet. I love thinking about how the progression's going to work. And I get a lot out of that, nerding out over that, so.
100%. I would say the beauty's in the journey. Like exactly what you just said.
Yeah.
I'd be a completely different person if I didn't lift weights. If I was in the gym probably saved my life in multiple different ways. It's not even funny. I would say if you get in the gym, I would say get not even honestly not even get in them, just get active, just move, play a sport, just get outside, just do something where your body's in motion and where you're present and in the moment. And 100%, like you said, I'm noticing even at my age and just the way I train and somehow how I structure my training, I get real experimental now. And it's just like, I'm still progressing and it's just fun to experiment with my own body. If that makes sense in terms of like seeing how my body reacts to certain training. Like I know recently, probably about 2 months ago, Dan John, shout out to another legendary strength coach.
Absolutely.
He has this 10,000 kettlebell swing challenge, and I was reading about it, and I was like, "Fuck it, I think I can do something. I think I can do like 500 swings a day for not like at his level, but like I think I can build my working capacity doing kettlebell swings."
Yeah,
and I was like, "Okay, let's start throwing these in." Like, I know it's gonna affect some of my strength lifts, but we can experiment.
absolutely. Yeah, and as long as you recognize that trade-off and you know are at peace with it. Yeah. Exactly. And I think long term, you may not be able to express the improvement that you're going to get from that immediately because there's a higher fatigue cost in the acute timeline, but eventually that's going to develop your work capacity. You can probably put in more quality reps, recover more quickly between sets of squats, and a year down the line you are going to be able to express that strength that you've gained.
Exactly. And that was my exact same kind of approach going into it. It switches up the training, a little less sport specific, but like you said, improve some of those aerobic capacities and some of that the building blocks, like as you know, essentially. And I think it has made it like, oh yeah, it bulletproofs your lower back, especially like sitting at work. But I did that for about 6 weeks and just kind of I was like, okay, I'll do that for like a quick 6 week cycle. Just kind of throw it in. But just the biggest thing, accepting that trade-off and knowing there's going to be a trade-off, but who gives a fuck?
Sure.
I know like at a certain level, it's just as I've gotten older, it's fun to do different things. And like I know a bunch of my friends are getting into like running 10Ks, like half marathons. And who knows, definitely I might go back to my cardio ways and from my grappling days. I know eventually down the road I'll try to do that, but I'm pretty just content lifting. But oh no, definitely I'm not. Someone wants to go walk a trail. No, I'm not scared that's going to mess with my training. You like, come on now. Or like diet wise, it's like, oh, if I want to, I'm going to eat that. Like if I want to eat it, I eat pretty clean generally and like very pretty clean diet. But like if I want to eat some burger and fries and a milkshake, like I'm gonna get it and not feel guilty at all.
Yeah, man, let it happen. Yeah, me and the fiance are gonna go do like a chicken tour of Tallahassee next weekend. Compare like slim chickens and stuff. And I'm sure we'll be miserable by the end of the day, but it'll be fun. So
I love it, man. Yeah. I've gotten like wrapped up in this. How long this is kind of down a trip down memory lane for me, especially brought up bodybuilding.com. I was
totally.
Oh my gosh, I haven't heard someone reference that in real life in like, because you're already coming from a mind state where it's like at some level you're like, oh, I kind of know where he's coming from.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it seems like we kind of initially got into it or at around the same era. So it makes sense that we have those overlapping influences. Yeah. But it took me back too, man. I'm really glad you agreed to come on.
Oh no, 100%.
Yeah. I don't want to sign off without mentioning this. At the beginning, you had said that your parents kind of guided you into martial arts because you were sort of an introvert, a little bit of like an inside gamer. And I just gotta say, man, you said that you wouldn't be who you are today without lifting. It's so apparent to me. You have a tremendous amount of kind of self-confidence and gregariousness that just in a very positive way,
Appreciate that,
boils
man.
through. Absolutely, man. So yeah, you talk about seeing the change. I mean, that's yeah.
I for a lot of my life, I would not be this way. There was a shift, and it's like that fork in the road, and I went one way, and it completely changed me as an individual for the better, I think. But no, 100% Mason. We got to have another conversation,
dude. I'd love to have you back on because we didn't even get to talk about Lu and Karlos at the fucking the IWF the other weekend.
Oh no, we didn't even. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So 100% a part two, and next week my co-host Jacob is going to probably be back on, so maybe we can do like a triumvirate. But yeah, I'd love to have you back on, man.
Oh yeah, definitely. No, this was fun, Mason. For real. No, I really appreciate this.